Are you ready to call me a shill? Get warmed up. Everybody, this is, you ready? Maybe gargle some salt water. Practice screaming in the mirror a little bit. Because I'm going to say something I don't normally say. I think FIFA's actually done a good thing here. I'll pause for effect. What can I say? Zealandism, I've been bought out. They got me a condo in Dubai. I got like an oceanfront view and a couple of palm trees in my living room, and I've been bought out. That's all it took. One condo and one of those jets Taylor Swift has. I said I wanted one of those too. But seriously, I saw this news and I investigated it a little bit, and I actually don't hate it. So if you saw the news cross your ticker wire about Arsene Wenger now heading a panel that has to do with managing things like player safety, it is actually a good thing. I feel like Arsene Wenger has been a force for good. Maybe he's the one that should be getting more credit than FIFA. I don't know what motivates this. The way it's worded on ESPN's article is FIFA's ready to host talks led by Arsene Wenger. So maybe Arsene Wenger went to FIFA and was like, I want to do this. And they were like, sure, bro. You got it. But the talks are about improving player welfare and potentially limiting the number of games played in a congested calendar. And by far, most important for me, mandating off-season breaks. That's by far kind of the most important thing for me. Now, I have no idea how much bite this task force is going to have that Arsene Wenger is going to be heading, right? But he is assembling a team. He's assembling the Avengers to actually try to tackle the match load problem, or at least as they are calling it, improving player welfare, which is, if you talk to any player for more than 5 seconds, if you get in an interview with any player from Jules Koundé to Rodri talking about they played too many matches. If you look at Cole Palmer checking out of an international window in September, right near the start of the season because of quote unquote fatigue, there is a problem with the number of matches that are being played. And I have long past narrowed down that problem to the fact that the entire alleged offseason is occupied by international matches and or meaningless international tours designed to make a few $1 million for the host club, or maybe tens of millions of dollars if you're one of those clubs like Bayern Munich or Real Madrid that's able to kind of rake in that amount of money. The most telling one for me ever was Barcelona ends its season and then goes and plays it. Literally gets on an overnight flight right after its last match of the season, flies directly to Japan for a Japanese tour. And you just think about, how are these players supposed to exist as human beings that have, lives if their entire family isn't just on the move with them every couple of days, no matter where they happen to be going? Unless you're fortunate enough to live in a country the size of England where you can basically come back home every night no matter where you're playing. This is very clearly a problem with that obvious, simple solution that I already talked about, but apparently they're at least appointing a panel to try to investigate that. Now, you might be wondering, who is going to be involved on this panel? Well, fortunately for you, I have the answer, of course. The people on this panel are going to be Global Players Union, that's FIFPro people, clubs and domestic league representatives, and national federations. So you're going to have representatives from clubs, you're going to have representatives from the Players Union, you're going to have representatives from the domestic leagues, and you are going to have representatives from the international federations. That sounds great, doesn't it? That sounds fantastic. It sounds like we're including everybody. What it isn't is great. It's not great because if you are including the people that have the power over the situation already in this conversation, nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change. I know I started this video on a more optimistic note, and that's because it is a good thing that they are, Arsene Wenger and FIFA are trying to take this proactive role in looking into improving player welfare so that we can get the best players playing in the biggest matches, feeling like them, their best selves. But this is not gonna. This is not gonna change. In fact, it's not even the first time this has happened. Those groups previously had seats on a committee of stakeholders that FIFA shut down in 2021. There was already a committee about this. It got shut down. I don't know why it got shut down. Maybe it had something to do with COVID, or just based off of the year that it got shut down. But this apparently it was already a thing, and it wasn't doing anything to actually stop it. And in fact, in the intervening years where this has been unleashed upon society, like where there wasn't even this panel. We've had the FIFA Club World Cup introduced that now has 32 teams and is a giant tournament so large that Cole Palmer and a couple of other players are being rested in the conference league so that they have the opportunity to be fit at the end of the season to play in that gargantuan behemoth of a tournament. Right? That's the situation that we've now been teed up for now. But if you're involving leagues and clubs and national federations, all the leagues, all the clubs, all the national federations want to make more money. They want to make more money. They want to play more matches so that they can make more money. And there is no incentive for them to not do that. There really just isn't. But everybody is aware of the fact that the players are playing too many matches, and so I don't know what direction they're going to go in. Look, FIFA started this panel, so it is possible for these like financially incentivized institutions to have, to be shown the light, I guess, in some ways, to have somebody like Arsene Wenger show up and be like, hey, maybe it would be a good idea if we did this instead of, not doing this. Maybe you can do that with all of the leagues, the clubs, and the federations that are involved in this actual panel. I'm just going to press X to doubt because, as things stand right now, there is nothing stopping them from scheduling friendly tours all over the world to try and make as much money as possible to push up their FFP so that they have more money to spend. And that's the way the entire game works. That's the way it has worked since, the Premier League was formed. Honestly, that's the way that it's worked since the beginning of time, unless you want to end up like Leeds or Portsmouth or, one of these clubs that just evaporates and ceases to exist. You have to do this sort of stuff. Now, what is this panel is different than the one before, though, and what is its scope? Well, ESPN's got us again. They're just regurgitating the Associated Press article, so shout out to the Associated Press. Said the scope is operational, medical, regulatory, and legal. I don't even know what legal would be, but I like the idea of it being medical. That's what you need to include the most. You need to include the medical side of this. And this AP story references that again. This is a quote from the FIFA statement. The task force is due to make recommendations informed by the latest scientific research into the topics of players' physical and mental well-being. I really don't think that what the medical science is going to say is going to matter at all. I think that there is one other avenue that the Associated Press points out in this article, this kind of statement that this is happening, that could end up having a much bigger impact on the situation as a whole. And that is the fact that there is real legal pressure starting to mount against FIFA and all of these other organizations that are in charge of this, be it the leagues, the clubs, and what have you, the national federations. Because like I was saying earlier, it is in their best interest to play as many matches as possible, get those on the most expensive TV contracts possible, make as much money as possible so they can spend more money and be more competitive, and it's just this giant machine. You have to find a way to make it not the best way for a club to operate to do that. And a part of the way to do that is this legal pressure. The consultation is going to start, like this panel, I imagine, is being formed in part in a response to FIFA being under increasing legal pressure to listen to more stakeholders. You wonder what those stakeholders are? There is a formal complaint to the European Commission in Brussels this month by union and league officials. This means that players' unions and officials are starting to actually bring up legal challenges to the kind of working environment that is being provided for these players. Now, that is really interesting because it does have the opportunity, if you can nitpick all of this to try and find laws that are being violated, breaks that are not being provided, all that sort of stuff, right? The complex legal side of workplace law that you can start to dig into, and you can start to try and use the power of unions, which traditionally are way weaker than they are in American sports. There's American sports, there's like one league in one players union, and they kind of go at each other. And I know there is one giant players union, but the players that are involved in it in FIFA Pro, right, they're in such disparate situations where if you're in like the NFL, you're in the NFL, right? There is it's like just players in the Premier League having a union and negotiating with all of FIFA, right? Like that is That's why unions in the United States have a lot more power and they can send leagues into lockouts and all those sorts of things. Well, the power has not really been there as much in the footballing world up to this point. This is the sort of issue that might be able to galvanize people into being able to force FIFA in the leagues and the federations to the bargaining table to try and do this. And maybe some forward-thinking leaders in those realms are going to recognize that if they give up a little now, they won't have to give up a lot later. But I would imagine a lot of these people that are involved in leading those organizations aren't going to think that way, and they're going to try and fight it tooth and nail and force the players into going into a boycott. And that might be where we head at the natural conclusion of this legal proceeding that has been entered into. The filing itself cited European competition law and how FIFA has expanded or added new competitions that increase the workload for elite players, that has pushed some to talk of going on strike. Bingo, bango, bongo. Really hope we're not going there. Really hope we're not going there. And credit to FIFA and thank you to Arsene Wenger for starting this panel. At least it's not disbanded anymore. But the starting of the panel is like that 1% progress, and you need to go the other 99% to make sure that players are healthy and make sure that the players don't go on strike so that I can keep watching games, basically, right?